Okay, welcome everybody, welcome to HLB Mann Judd. My name's Michael Hutton, I'm a partner here in the wealth management section of the firm, and we've got a really interesting topic here tonight, a very important topic, aged care. And it's something that's coming up very regularly in our discussions with clients, either for themselves or maybe they're thinking about their aged parents and so forth, which I assume that's what all you were here for today. Yeah. Yes. It's a very young-looking audience for this topic. And it's such an important topic that we now have a whole Royal Commission looking at at this area. This comes hot on the heels of us all being appalled by the Financial Services Royal Commission, and I do suspect that we're going to be fairly horrified by some of the stuff that comes out of the Aged Care Commission as well. And that report's not due until April next year, so in about a year's time. As a wealth management firm, our interest in this area, or our focus in this area, is around the sympathetically advising on the financial aspects, because they are very complicated and there are quite a few different planning options available to people. So really getting our heads around the financial side of that. Tonight you're lucky to be hearing from three very knowledgeable speakers on different aspects of aged care. So what I'll do, firstly I'll introduce the panel of speakers to you, and then they'll roll through until probably about 6:15, something like that, and then the aim will be to have a panel. We've got the chairs set up there, so we can have a panel and you can ask any questions that you might have at the end. So if you could hold your questions until the end so we can keep things flowing. We'll aim to wrap up by about 6:30, after which you're very welcome to join us for canapes and drinks out in the foyer area afterwards. So our first speaker will be Danielle Robertson. Danielle's the founder of DR Care Solutions, and she's here to talk with us about in-home care. Now, Danielle has worked in the care sector for more than 3 decades. Is that right? Mm-hmm. 3 decades. Far too young. Thank you. For 3 decades. But Danielle has an intimate knowledge of the options available. This knowledge and experience emanates from her leading Dial and Angel for many years, which was Australia's only national agency specialising in providing aged, home and childcare. And they're also a very long-term client of our firm as well, so a long-standing relationship with Danielle. Now, Danielle also advises senior managers, CEOs and directors in the care industry on policy and process improvement. So a very experienced lady in this space. Danielle will be followed by Cameron Kirby, who we're very lucky to have here tonight as well. He'll talk about residential care options. Now, Cameron's the CEO of the award-winning Mark Moran Group, and they're also clients of our firm, so there's a bit of a theme there, which is good. And they're widely regarded, I think, as being a leading aged care and retirement living provider. And many of you might have seen the flagship facility that they've got over there at Vaucluse. They're up on the cliff top at Vaucluse, magnificent facility there. And it's very strategically and conveniently located directly across the road from the cemetery. That's not part of the official bio, I just threw that in. So prior to joining Mark Moran Group in 2011, Cameron held senior financial and operational roles in major ASX-listed and multinational companies, including Foxtel, Salmat, Endemol Shine, and he has experience in leading M&A transactions and also company restructuring projects. So again, a very experienced person to be speaking to us tonight. And then you get to hear from our own Melinda Measday. Melinda's the director of our wealth management division here at HLB. She's a chartered accountant and she's a newly accredited aged care advisor. Now, Melinda will talk about the financial side of things. It's always good to get some numbers in there, with these presentations. So she'll talk to us about how that stacks up. And she also, you get to see, Melinda has a very personal appreciation of and interest in this topic. So as I mentioned, we'll let the speakers do their stuff, then if we can have a panel question and answer session at the end. And I now welcome Danielle Robertson.
Thank you to Melinda and to Michael and for having us here today. It's a broad subject to speak about in a very short space of time, so without further ado, I've just got a little video that I'd like you to watch, and it will just set the scene for you.
No one wants to die. Even people who want to go to heaven don't want to die to get there. And yet, death is the destination we all share. No one has ever escaped it. And that is as it should be, because death is very likely the single best invention of life. It's life's change agent. It clears out the old to make way for the new.
So that just sets the scene that not too many people think about death and dying. But living longer, living better, the choice is individual. My background is helping people. I come from a long line of family business. My mother started Dial an Angel in 1967, and that was what Michael mentioned before. It was a home health organisation, home care. We saw a growth in the aged care and disability care side of things. I came into the business in 1986, so there's my 33 years experience. And I took over from Mum in 2003 as CEO. She said only Prince Charles had a longer apprenticeship than myself, so that was after 17 years. And I took the business from a reasonable size to a national organisation, 10 offices. We had 10,000 angels, 1,500 staff angels, and around 75 office staff. So it was quite a large business. We sold that business in 2014. One of the reasons we sold it was we could see this tsunami of older Australians coming, and we had very high standards for our angels that did the care. And we were very concerned that we would not have enough angels to help our clients, and we didn't want to drop the standard just to fill bookings. So we decided either to put the business out to market to sell, to merge with another business our size, or start buying up smaller providers. So we were sold to a community care organisation. I worked with the new crew until May 2015. Decided to go out on my own and do something a little bit different, because I could see there was a real need for clients to have impartial advice and help navigate through this industry. It was in fact a financial advisor who contacted me and said, look Danielle, I've got a client who traditionally I would have said sell the family home and move into a residential aged care. But he said, I've heard so much about home care recently, can you just come and have a chat with them about home care and what's actually involved? So there's one financial advisor, I helped 5 of his clients, and 3 of them I introduced a home care provider to. One I helped move into a retirement village, and one I helped into residential aged care. And then I realised that there was a real need for a service like this, totally independent. The client pays me, the residential aged care facility doesn't pay me, the retirement village doesn't pay me, the home care providers don't pay me. So I'm totally independent. That's all right. With home care, there's an entry-level home care. A lot of people have this misconception that they're all going to get government funding immediately when they decide that they need a little bit of help. That's not the case. Planning ahead and having the discussions with family members or relatives that you know who are ageing, start the discussions now. It's not an easy discussion to have, but bring up in a nice, comfortable situation. Not that, Mum, I've noticed that your fridge is empty, or Mum, I've noticed that you haven't had a shower in a week. It's more about, let's think about what we're going to do as a family and plan ahead for the future. And that's where we work in with the advisors very carefully, because we need to plan not just for retirement, it's about aged care. I think people forget about that. There's another big whole hunk after retirement living called aged care. And to remain at home, nearly everyone in the room would probably want to stay in their own home as they age. There's this fear, oh my gosh, I don't want to go into an aged care facility because I'm going to be hurt or injured, or I just don't want to be, if I know I'm going in, I'm not coming out. Well, not alive anyway. So, you know, there's a concern around that. So it's actually us, we're talking about it now because a lot of the facilities are doing a damn good job. Yes, there's a Royal Commission to Aged Care, and that will prove that there's only a small percentage of bad providers out there. There's a small percentage of people doing the wrong thing. But there's a hell of a lot of good providers doing some great stuff. So we just need to be mindful of that. But going back to the discussions where you're having that discussion with your family member, it's important that you spend that time to talk about what is it that they want and what their wishes are. And that's really important, not just to tell your family member what they should be doing, but ask them what they would like. And you'll find out, I've had a client just recently who's a doctor, he's a rehabilitation surgeon. He said, I can't get through to my parents. I don't know what to say or do to find out what they want. Within half an hour of me being there, I actually found out that they want to remain at home for as long as they can with quality and the right care. So it's actually listening to your clients or your parents or your relatives. According to the Intergenerational Report of 2015, life expectancy at birth will be 95.1 years for men and 96.6 years for women by 2054. So that's quite old. The average age of my client is 88. One of my clients, who was 102, passed away last week. She was in residential aged care, and we had private care coming in 3 hours a day, 3 times a week, just to spend time with her and be a companion, take her out into the sunshine. But she was 102, and it just gave her something to live for and be happy to know that there was a carer coming in a couple of times a week. And it was really good for the carer, who was semi-retired and was giving back. She said, this is what I love. Yes, I earn a little bit of money, but this is what I love. I've been matched with such a beautiful lady and heard her story at 102. It's amazing. There's a few things I just have to gloss over, really. With the home care packages, there's 2 lots there. You've got Commonwealth Home Support, which is your initial entry point into home care. And that's only if you are finding things difficult at home, such as domestic cleaning or gardening, or you might need some podiatry or some other allied help. It doesn't mean that you're going to get government funding. You can ring My Aged Care, you can get an assessment through the Regional Assessment Service. They'll come out and see you. They'll ask you what you can and can't do for yourself, and then likely say, I'm sorry, we'll do our best, but you'll be on a wait list. So if you have some funds available, I recommend that you start the services sooner rather than later, on your own recognizance, on your own, out of your own pocket. Because by waiting for the government, it's not going to happen. If you're further down the track and you need more assistance, there's 4 levels of home care. Level 1, 2, 3 and 4. Level 1 is around $8,000 a year in government funding. That will give you about 2.5 hours a week of assistance. Level 2 is around $13,000 and you're getting about 4.5 hours a week. So it's not huge amounts, Even for a level 4 package at $50,000 a year, the average amount of hours that you can get is between 18 and 22, if you're lucky, depending on the provider. So it's not a huge amount. If you have dementia, you're given $50,000 from the government, but then, you know, to have 24-hour care, it's a hell of a lot more than that. So you may need to either get equity release from your home, you may need to sell the home, you may need to sell an investment property, sell some shares, whatever it be, so that you've actually got some more funds to be able to pay for your care. So just to think ahead that if you do want to remain at home, you're not guaranteed to get government funding. Currently there's 129,000 people on the wait list for home care packages for levels 3 and level 4. A lot of people are taking lower entry packages on the proviso that they're hopefully going to get higher levels later on. So you can't be guaranteed that you're going to get this. My own father last year was assessed as a level 4. We had him at home until he was a high falls risk. He had vascular dementia. He was falling constantly. He was having TIA, which is mini strokes. And we decided that we'd have to get home care to support his partner Alice, who was working 24 hours a day, and things were happening to her. She was developing blood clots. I was more concerned about carer stress than I was about my own father. So that's really important to think ahead. So I introduced home care, fee for service at our cost. But what we did is, when it got to a point where it was too hard to keep Dad at home, we moved him into residential aged care for respite. And what we found is he was a high falls risk. He had 2 falls within 2 weeks of being in residential aged care. I didn't want my father restrained, so we organised for a carer to be there 4 hours a day, 7 days a week at our cost. And then Dad's partner Alice would go in from 11:15, have a handover with the carer. So for 8 hours a day, we had someone one-on-one with Dad. After that 8 hours, we actually had to have the facility care for him. And they did their best. You know, the carers there did their best. They were running. They were really having a lot of difficulty because there weren't enough hands on deck. So for me, from my perspective, for my father to die with dignity, we paid for additional home care into the nursing home. Unfortunately, Dad's package never came through, and he passed away on the 1st of December last year. So you can't rely on the government funding coming through no matter what. So planning ahead is really important. There are other options. There are thinking about downsizing. If you're thinking about downsizing, there's options of moving into a strata apartment, moving into retirement living. You know, some people I've spoken to are saying, I'm selling up, I'm going on a cruise ship, I'm going on the world cruise ship, and they've got medical attention there, they change my sheets, I've got food and drink all day, I come into ports, my kids can fly in, or sell up and go to Bali. You know, the help over there is cheap in Bali. But look, realistically, there are options for you to start thinking about. Look, there's some fantastic aged care facilities. I've helped a number of clients into residential aged care as well. I mean, the Vaucluse is state-of-the-art, 7-star. It's like a hotel. I mean, you know, for me, it would be fantastic. My father would have been mortified that we were going into something like so palatial. And, you know, sometimes you do need to work with the client to understand what they want and what they need. Sometimes it's the kids saying, yes, I want that for mum or dad, but you do really need to listen to them. So the different care options, you saw those before. I've seen people pooling their superannuation funds and buying a house and living together. And that was a group of women down in Wollongong that I met. And they had very strict contracts between them, so that if one developed dementia, they'd have to sell their portion and move out, which was a shame because the whole reason of pooling their funds was to be able to keep them at home for as long as possible. There's some new models of care coming out. There's a gentleman in Victoria, Sale in Victoria. His wife had MS, and he would have loved to have kept her at home until she died, but he had to move her into a residential aged care facility in her 50s. After she passed away, he thought, wouldn't it have been great if I could have just had her in our home, but having 24-hour care on site? So what he developed a plan, a new model of care. It's called Freedom Key Housing, and they're 4 3-bedroom homes with the centre part all joined together, and it's called the Key, and that's where all the care takes place. So it allows people to live with their family, and it might be, I did go down and have a look at it, and there was an older couple there with their son who has a disability. So they're all together, but the parents felt it was essential to make sure their son was settled before they passed away. and the care takes place in the middle of this facility. It's a group house, really, but it was very individual. And that's fee for service, but you can use your government-funded home care package in that situation if need be. There's dementia-specific group homes. Group Homes Australia have a very similar sort of concept where it's a residential home. It's been retrofitted, but it's got 10 rooms, and the centre is where the living takes place. But there's care on site. There's 3 carers 24 hours a day, and a registered nurse comes in on a regular basis, I think daily. But that's not government funded at this stage, but you can bring your home care package in on that. There's palliative care, and a lot of people want to die at home, and sometimes that's feasible, sometimes it's not. We're finding that a lot of the facilities are now offering palliative care, so that and really beautiful palliative care in the facilities to give people a lovely end of life. And as I said, if all else fails, sell up and go on the world cruise ship. There's lots of innovations to support Australians staying at home. There's lots of new equipment that you can buy and have access to the internet to allow you to stay at home and have, you might not need 24-hour care, but there's alarm systems and monitoring systems that can help you. There's internet-based telephone systems for socialisation, because socialisation is one of the biggest killers, I think, for people staying in their own homes. Loneliness. So there's new innovations all the time coming through that will help you to remain at home for as long as possible. And sometimes it's not always possible to do that. So how I work with clients, I usually get a referral from an advisor, and I work with the advisor and the family together. And I undertake a care needs assessment, so I understand what the client's physical care needs are, their cognitive care needs, their spiritual care needs, their social care needs, and we pull together a holistic life plan. And then we talk about different options and what they're thinking that they would like to achieve. Often this is as a result of a life event that we saw before, and then things have to move very ahead. You have your life plan, you know what's ahead. If you do have a life event, that you can then enact that life plan. So the second part, so after I've developed the life plan, the family can go away and digest that, look at the recommendations and start thinking about whether they want to move into a facility or downsize into retirement living, or whether they'd like to start home care. Often once a life event does happen, that's when the implementation happens. So I'll help people navigate the aged care industry. So help them with government funding, as well as finding the right care for that individual. And it might be, for an example, I had a client who lives in London, the daughter lives in London, the mum's here, she's Filipino Catholic, and she said, I want Filipino Catholic carers to look after mum because she goes to church, she wants the food that she used to like eating, and she goes to the cemetery each day to visit her husband's grave. I put it out to my care provider network. I came back with one provider that said they had 2 carers, Filipino Catholic carers. What a match. The daughter in London could not believe that we were able to find the right care for her mum. So it just depends on listening to what the client wants and needs, also listening to their kids, but also the main thing is to listen to the people themselves and really make a broad understanding of what that person wants. If they've lost capacity, it's a bit different, and the children or the powers of attorney or enduring guardian will need to think about that sort of thing. And that's another thing, estate planning. I can't believe the number of people that don't have wills or current wills. It's absolutely essential to have it. If you've got assets, if you've got siblings, if you've got children, if you've got parents, you need to have a will. You need to think about enduring guardianship and powers of attorney. Powers of attorney help you with your financial decisions. That's great, no problems if you lose capacity. But the enduring guardianship is all about your care, health and accommodation decisions. So that also needs to be made sure that you've got the right people doing that for you. And certainly think about an advanced health directive, which is a living will. So if you develop something like motor neurons disease and you're unable to speak, or if you're unable to communicate and you don't want any further treatment, that needs to be documented. Because if you don't have that, and I think Cameron's going to be discussing that a little bit later, that somebody else can come in and make those decisions on your behalf. So just winding up now that there are plenty of different options available to you. Don't panic, plan ahead. If you've got a person who's in hospital, who's had a life event, and the hospital's saying, get them out, get them into a care facility ASAP, I always say slow the process down. Let's just think about this. It's a massive financial decision that you are making on the fly. So just slow the process down. I'll often, if the hospital is desperate to get that person out, we'll try and find respite to allow us time to work out what the right situation is. Often I've pulled people out of respite back home with care by just slowing that process down. They haven't needed to go in for permanent care. Respite was enough time for us to allow to actually work out what we wanted and what we needed and what was right for that individual. And they're often then at home for another 18 months to 2 years longer than they would have been if they'd gone in there permanently. So it's just trying to find and listen to what that person wants and trying to find the right care solution. And I'm free for questions later on, or you can, there's a brochure out there you can take. Give me a call. There's no charge for a call. I'm happy to have an hour on the phone with anyone and go through your particular situation, guide you and support you. And only if you engage my services, then charges apply. Thanks.
Hi everyone, and my name's Cameron Kirby. I'm the CEO of the Mark Moran Group, and thank you, Mann Judd, for inviting me to speak to you today about retirement and aged care. So here are our co-founders, Mark and Yvette Moran, and Mark Moran, you may have heard of the Moran Group or the Moran Group, they pronounce the name Moran. So Mark ran the family company for about 10 years before he sold it. The company still exists, but his brother runs it. So Mark and Yvette set out to create their own company, which is the Mark Moran Group, different from the Moran Group. And they had a very bold vision. So we believe age is to be celebrated and enjoyed. It's proven to be the happiest time in people's life. And so we really believe that people should be making the most of their life in their later years. And we're committed to bring a vibrant lifestyle, you know, with a holistic approach to care. So as Danielle mentioned, I can't emphasise enough how important it is to get an enduring guardian and a power of attorney, enduring power of attorney in place. In this space, if you don't make the decisions, somebody else will make those decisions for you. And all of those decisions and all of that control will really be taken out of your hands. And if you don't have somebody in place, it will be the public trustee that takes over things. And in my experience, they've really been terrible. I really would not recommend to anyone that they deal with a public trustee. Apologies, but I've had so many experiences with them, and not a single good one. So I always just mention that it's really important. This is just a book. We've only got 20 minutes here. And aged care, retirement, home care, all of these things, they're extremely complex areas. And many people that are dealing with them are confronting them for the first time. And they're often, particularly in aged care, they're confronting them in a time of crisis. And people are often really can't believe how complex it is. Government couldn't really make it any more complicated, in my view. This is a fantastic book. Rachel Lane is a financial advisor, you know, with an aged care background. Neil Whitaker, you'd see, he writes in the papers. Hopefully they've updated it. It's probably a few years old now. They may have updated the version. Very simple to read book. Really lays out everything to do with home care, aged care, retirement care, ACAT processes, funding processes. You know, really very easy to read book. So I just suggest that to you. So aged care really consists of three areas. You have the retirement living or retirement village area, you have home care, and you have aged care. And certainly in the last few years we've seen a convergence of those coming together. So home care is receiving care in your home, and the government funds that through the federal government. Aged care is obviously aged care facilities, nursing home. And retirement villages have evolved, and I'll go through that in more detail, but they've really evolved from being an alternative to apartment living to being, you know, something a bit more, really, we're seeing low care happening more in retirement villages. So just what is a retirement village? So a retirement village, they're communities where senior people that traditionally over 55s or over In most cases, they're much older than that. The average person in our police facility is about 83 years. They've got state government oversight. They've really evolved from developers, Lend-Lease, Stocklands, they're property developers that have really developed luxury type lifestyle communities. Most of them don't do care, so the residents need to then organise their own care. It's where Danielle comes into play. They don't have any licensing requirements, there's no accreditation agency oversight. There's many different land title options, some of them are freehold, some of them are strata, some of them are leases. And as I was saying, they're really becoming more of low care facilities these days. And we're seeing what's called a co-located environment where people are you're starting to see aged care and retirement operating in the same site. And I personally believe if you're looking at a retirement village option, I would really strongly recommend that you look at one that has an aged care facility on site, because it really provides you with that continuum of care. Whereas otherwise you've got a retirement village, you have to then exit the retirement village, you then have to sell the apartment to someone else. It's a really painstaking process, and then you're moving again into another aged care facility. So really, the financial considerations, really just briefly again, so that you pay an ingoing contribution, which tends to be the sale price that allows you to buy in. There tend to be deferred management fees. Again, there's many different retirement village models again, but this is the most typical version. You pay a deferred management fee, and that fee is normally, it goes towards the management fee for the operator, because their other fees don't have any profit in them, and in many cases they make losses. And it also goes towards the capital upkeep of the village. There's also monthly charges, which in most villages, they act a bit like a strata fee. So they're the actual costs of running the village, includes the village manager, includes all of their IT systems, maintenance, all of those things that tend to happen. And then they pull them together and divide them amongst all the residents. Residents tend to have budgets, residents vote on them with AGMs and everything, and that then forms the monthly fee. You then also have to consider what the capital gain and the buyback options are. And again, there's various models. There's some of them attached to what the exit price is, some of them attached to what the entry price is. And then you have other user pay charges, so whether there's additional care and other things that are provided as well. So there's been a lot of talk about both the retirement village sector, which is a state government overseen sector, has had its own set of problems, or certainly has attracted a lot of attention in the media and with the government. And the aged care sector, which is a federal government jurisdiction, has also had a lot of attention on them, and they've been approached in two different ways. So in the aged care, we've all heard about the Royal Commission. In the state in New South Wales, in any case, the state government ordered an inquiry into it. It was headed up by Catherine Reiner. That inquiry made 17 recommendations, and this is the report. If you're looking at retirement living, I would encourage you to read this report. I think it will certainly go into a lot of the problems, the pitfalls that many people would experience in a retirement village. And it's certainly great education in terms of going in eyes open. So most of the recommendations are focused around transparency, providing clarity around fees, certainty of buybacks, dispute resolution, accountability, and I'll talk about our approach to that in a second. So the government has looked at that report, received it, and they've made they've announced a number of reforms. So the reforms that are going to start on the 1st of July include annual contract check-up meetings, emergency plans, annual evacuation exercises, safety information, order appointment. But they've flagged probably the bigger issues that people tend to worry about. And they tend to be about the resale of their apartments and those sorts of financial considerations. So the government have flagged changes that they'd like to make relating to those areas, but they haven't actually done anything about it yet. So I think they have to get elected first, and then I'm sure they'll start having a look at that. But fair trading, the Department of Fair Trading oversees retirement villages in Australia, and certainly I've referred to their website to also find out more information about it. Okay, so our approach to it, I mean, we were pleasantly surprised, and I've met and spoken with Catherine Greiner as well. Our ethos as a business is already doing all these things. I mean, that's just the way that we approach things. So we're very big believers in being upfront with everyone, being completely transparent with everyone. We don't want anyone to have any surprises, and having come from the aged care area into the retirement area, we're able to sort of bring a lot of the aged care concepts into the retirement area as well. And so all of our fees are known up front. They don't change, there's no surprises. You'll know exactly what you're paying from the very beginning. Our monthly fee is fixed for life. So before I was talking about how people, they meet every year, they go through a budget, they have a big argument over what all the fees are. Our approach is that we want to eliminate all of those sorts of arguments, and so we just fix the fee for life. We guarantee the buyback. So in many villages, it may take 2-3 years in worst case scenarios, and many of the sort of stories that you see on a current affair involve exactly this problem, where they leave the village, they might be in aged care, they're paying all the aged care fees, and yet they're still paying all the retirement village fees as well, because it's taken them a long time to be able to sell their apartment. They've got to refurbish it, and that becomes their problem. We believe that, you know, we want to align our interests with our members, and we believe that if we're providing a really good product, then it really should be up to us to resell it. And so we try and resell it within 6 months. If we haven't resold it within 6 months, we give them their money back in any case. Okay? We stop our fees as soon as the apartment is handed back. So as soon as people have moved all their furniture out, it takes a day, hand the key back, that's it, they're finished. So our fees stop. Okay? We pay for all the refurbishment costs. So again, we run the facility. We believe that if we're running a really good product, if we're doing everything really well, then it really should be up to us to be able to take on all that risk and resell it. And so that's our approach to it. In the event that you need to move into our aged care facility, which is normally what happens in most cases, that person will move into the aged care facility. The family normally moves all their furniture out, they hand the keys back to us, and our fees stop in retirement, but we immediately transfer that sale proceeds amount, the ingoing contribution, gets transferred into the aged care lump sum, the RADs, which I think Melinda is going to be talking about. So what that means is that I'm not aware of anyone else that does this, but what it means is that we don't believe that people should be paying twice. We don't believe that we should be double dipping, and so we move from retirement into aged care. They start paying aged care, and they end all the retirement fees. Okay, so the aged care side of the business, again, it's very, very different. It's derived from the hospital system in Australia and in most countries, and what used to be referred to as nursing homes. Even more complicated, much more complicated than retirement in terms of all the regulations. So it has federal government oversight. People tend to have to put down a lump sum amount, or they have an option of paying an interest amount, and I'll let Melinda go into that in more detail. It's funded through ACFI, which is the Aged Care Funding Instrument, complex funding system that basically people are scored in terms of what their care requirements are in 3 domains: activities of daily living, behaviour and complex care. And there's pretty much 64 different funding outcomes that can come out of that, and that determines how an aged care operator is funded. There's the oversight is through an accreditation agency. So an accreditation agency will big accreditation process every 3 years. If you get a clean bill of health, they'll accredit you for 3 years. If you don't, then they won't, and they'll have further follow-up work. They then have a whole lot of visits that they do. They have, have unannounced visits, they have announced visits. They can turn up in the middle of the night, they can turn up on the weekend, and they start going through, they look into all sorts of different areas of it. And I think they've learned from the Banking Royal Commission, because they're approaching that really quite ruthlessly with aged care operators now. I think they're worried about the Royal Commission, and so you're seeing more and more operators that are being sanctioned or issued with non-compliance. The people who work in aged care facilities are subject to a number of requirements. So aged care operators must be registered as an approved provider. we must hold bed licences, which the government allocate in what they call rounds. However, there is a market for them. They cost about $75,000 per bed if you want to buy an aged care licence. So the accreditation was spoken about that. So aged care standards, there are 44 outcomes over 4 standards. However, there are new standards coming into place from the 1st of July 2017, 8 standards. And all staff that come into contact with residents have to have police checks, although there's been a lot of discussion in the media about making that a national, having some national information systems, because and even international, because you may get international people that may not have had any problems in Australia, they might have had some overseas. So there's generally 2 types of care in aged care, certainly the most popular 2 types of care, and Danielle again touched on it. So you have what's known as respite care, and respite care is temporary care. It tends to be people that, whether a carer has carer stress, they might need a break, they'll put a partner or a parent into aged care. And so the government provides 63 days of funding for temporary care, respite care. Many people use it as a bit of a try before you buy as well. So many people might go into respite for a couple of weeks before they then decide to go into permanent care. Even though there's 63 days of temporary care, it's pretty hard to find an aged care facility that will offer you 63 days. They tend to only offer a couple of weeks. And that's just because the limited beds and normally people wanting to become permanent as well. So after the 63 days you may have extensions. So talking about public trustee, classic example of the public trustee is that they'll tend to burn through their 63 days, they'll tend to burn through another 3 or 4 extensions, and then that resident will tend to have to be paying for their own care unfunded, because the public trustee's taken a year to try and organise the financial arrangements of it. And so that's just an example of what we tend to see with the public trustee. With permanent care is, as it says, it's permanent, but it's only, it's permanent on the provider, it's only as permanent as the resident wants it to be. So permanent care provides the resident the right to reside in the aged care facility for life. However, they may exit the aged care facility at any time by simply providing 14 days notice. Okay, so if they're not happy with it, they simply provide 14 days notice. They can go to another facility, they can go home. And so often people don't realise that the term permanent, seems much more permanent than what it may be. They also are entitled to 52 days of social leave a year, so they might go home for Christmas, they might go on holidays or weekends, and they have unlimited hospital leave too, where the providers must keep their beds secure. Tends to be 2 types of aged care facilities, certainly under the regulatory framework. They tend to be, you have non-extra service facilities and extra service facilities. Extra service is a concept that the government introduced several years ago now, and they were really just trying to provide greater levels of service, greater levels of things, of options for people. Okay. So we currently have 2 locations. We have a Little Bay location, it's a 155 bed extra service facility, but we do also offer some concessional beds at Little Bay, and concessional beds tend to be people that have low means, low financial means. Also, people that may have a partner living in a house have a lot of protections that the government provide as well, that may also have them allocated or assigned as a supported or a concessional resident. And then we have our facility at Vaucluse, which is about 2.5 years old now, and we have 91 aged care extra service beds and rooms, both facilities are all single rooms with en-suites. And we have another 90 apartments, retirement apartments as well. So we also have 2 other locations that we're looking at. So we have the Shire in Caringbah. The blue marked area there is about 16 to 18, including some duplexes of residential sites that we've purchased down there next to Sutherland Hospital. We also have an aged care facility at Warrawee, there'll be about 105 beds that we're just waiting on the completion of the DA there as well. Okay. So look, we've won many awards. These are the awards that we've won over the last few years. I mean, the ones that I'm particularly proud of is the UDIA. It's a very prestigious property award that we won for excellence in seniors living. We also won the Fairfax PwC Aspire Award for Outstanding Staff Culture, and we've won the Asia Pacific Facility of the Year. We've won that a few times now actually, and that's judges from America and from all parts of Asia as well. So Vaucluse, as I said, we've got 90 apartments, 91 aged care rooms. The greatest benefit that people see in Vaucluse is it provides a full continuum of care, and people tend to go there because they never have to move. And they also receive a whole lot of extra services. Again, we do things very differently. Complimentary cleaning, laundry, groceries. We provide complimentary groceries, shuttle bus, security concierge services. Okay, I just want to mention couples, because couples is a really important thing. Most people who go into aged care end up getting separated. One of the great things about the co-located model is that you may have somebody suffering with even very severe dementia. We have a number of them at Vaucluse where, in all instances, it is the husband who has dementia, and that person then goes into the aged care during the day, but he's able to then return home with his wife, and they spend the night in the apartment. And so we try and maximise independence as much as we can, and we certainly try and maximise choice. So look, I've only got a couple of minutes left, but I thought I'd just sort of flick through and just give you a bit of an idea of the Vaucluse facility. Again, we're doing one similar to Vaucluse in the Shire as well. So is our atrium and our cafe. Very pet friendly, pets are really important. So we have our bar, residents come and have the bar, and these are our lifestyle team here that you see here. It's our Botanica restaurant, very popular restaurant. It's said to be the most Instagrammable restaurant in Sydney. We actually have people go there with changes of clothes so that they can take a change of clothes and take lots of photographs of them and put it up on Instagram. So there's our piazza entry here, our gardens. So we very much believe in integrating with the community. So we want our residents to feel part of the community. We want the community to feel part of our facilities as well. So here's our, we have Easter Egg Family Fun Days, so we had that last weekend where I think we had about 200 or 300 people there, kids doing Easter egg hunts. To come and be part and visit their parents, grandparents, stay with their grandparents, which is quite common, as well as just have the community come and see it and energise the whole place and create this sense of vibrancy because of again, another shot of the gardens, our market gardens. So we actually have market gardens where people grow their own vegetables and we use that in our food. We have kitchens, so on each of the aged care floors, each of them have a domestic kitchen, and the food is prepared there in those kitchens fresh. Big light wells, natural light running throughout the whole facility. And here's our pool, very popular with members doing laps, aqua aerobics. We have an Olympian that does swim lessons there for the members and the residents. Aqua aerobics, extremely popular. So all of those things are provided and they're all part of it. So that's it for me. So thank you, and I look forward to questions later on. So thanks very much. Moving in.
Thank you, Danielle and Cameron. Where do I sign up? I live at Rose Bay. It would be far to even move to Vaucluse. And let me just tell you a little bit about me and why I'm here this evening. My parents were Nokias. That's no kids in Adelaide. So they made the very brave step to move to Sydney when they retired and to be closer to their grandchildren. My father died shortly afterwards, and then in 2007 my mum was diagnosed with brain cancer, secondary from lung cancer. She made a pretty good recovery after surgery and lived a reasonably independent life at home. But about 4 years ago the cancer came back and she decided to seek further treatment. So as she became more frail, we organised some private home help, completely unaware of any government subsidies that were available. And that worked out for a while, worked out okay for a while. She got a bit more quirky. The carers kind of came and went. It was less than ideal. And then in between agencies, she had a fall. So that was me supposed to be looking after her, but I was busy doing other things, working. looking after 3 teenage girls. So the palliative care team at St Vincent's said, come in and we'll assess her and she can have a rest here. And that was a great relief. So in November 2015, I put my devoted daughter hat on, packed her a small bag and helped her say goodbye to her home. We knew it would probably be the last time she saw it. And settled her in St Vincent's, and then put on my supermum hat and drove home, hosted my daughter's Year 10 prees party for 40 16-year-old girls. So yeah, I definitely was part of the sandwich generation and looking after 3 different generations. After a few weeks, the reality was she was too sick and frail to go home and live at home, even with a great deal of help. Her mobility had gone down to just about 0. But she was not sick enough to stay at palliative care. And it was a very brief conversation I had with one brief conversation with the social worker there. Really the only option was an aged care facility. Here's the list. Here's the access cab service that you can use to get her there. And could we please have the bed by Friday? And that was the middle of December. So with 0 knowledge of the industry, because as of course it was not on her radar to ever be part of the aged care, be an aged care resident. I had no idea where to start. I had work deadlines, a pre-Christmas wedding in Melbourne to go to. So I had 2, maybe 3 days to find a bed in an aged care facility that specialised in palliative care, to visit and compare them all, negotiate a contract, work out how much it cost, who was going to pay, sew name tags on all mum's clothes, try and find her glasses that had gone missing somewhere in all the moves. Mum did not settle. She was paranoid and frightened and frail, immobile, confused, disorientated. It was not a very nice 12 weeks, and really her health declined and she passed away within a few months. They advertised themselves as a palliative care nursing home. I didn't believe they really were, and I ask everyone here tonight, if this is your case, make sure you talk through what palliative means to the nursing home you're considering. I felt it was all a really slightly clunky end to someone who lived a reasonably dignified life. So when HLB recognised there was a need for someone with knowledge in this sector to become part of our firm, I was happy to put my name forward. Now, I've been at Mann Judd for a long time, looking after self-managed super funds, and I know a lot of people in the audience tonight. But I was really thrilled to be able to skill up and use my personal experience to help others navigate the financial aspects, at the very least, of what can be a pretty emotional and bumpy journey. So now I see my role here as an aged care financial planner, and to listen to your story and circumstances, and then review the financial situation, and use our knowledge of the aged care industry and associated legislation and financial background that we already have here, to provide you with guidance and some options so that you can find the best care possible for your loved one. Now that might be nothing more than a half-hour telephone call to go through what you're thinking, right across to a full written statement of advice for some really complex options that you're faced with. But I'm not going to sew on anyone else's name tags. So this afternoon's aim, or this evening's aim, is to outline for me how the government helps with care, and I'll run that through very briefly because I think Cameron and Daniel have mentioned that really well. Introduced you to some of the more common acronyms, because there are many, and run through the cost structure of residential care, because that can be quite complicated. And then I'll look at a few examples of someone entering aged care at different asset levels. And finally touch on with some practical tips and tricks for around in particular the RAD, the refundable accommodation deposit. So this is my little diagram. Again, Daniel's already discussed with you, but we start with the Commonwealth Home Support Program. That's a Commonwealth funded home support for basic care, cleaning and gardening and what have you. So that's subsidised for everyone, but also everyone will contribute to that as well, depending on how much they can afford. And then for more formal home care, there are the home packages, again, Danielle mentioned. There may be a long wait list to get onto that, and there's a limit to how many hours a week that you'll be able to get. And of course on the left there's still private care, which it is immediate and then can also be a top-up for the other care packages. Because unless you've got someone living at home that can really fill in all the gaps with care, and I'm sure that's how most care starts. I imagine most carers are unpaid, probably helping the government billions of dollars with unpaid carers. And then finally, if the care needs are too much, then there's residential care at the end, respite and permanent, which Cameron has gone through. So if I can just look at the residential care fee structure, it's in 4 main parts. We've got the refundable accommodation deposit, or the RAD, on the left. Then the basic daily fee, which is what everyone pays, no matter what your financial means. And then there's a means-tested care fee. The level depends on your means, and the level depends on your medical, the level of care you need. And then finally, the residential aged care facility may also add on an extra services fee that Cameron mentioned. So the accommodation deposit pays for the bricks and mortar, pays for the accommodation, tends to be higher if the facilities are newer and shinier. It can also be paid as a daily fee. So the government has set down that the daily fee equivalent is 5.96% of the DAP over 12 months. So you're paying sort of interest on the deposit. You can pay part of the RAD and pay part of it as a daily payment, or we call it a DAP. You can pay all the RAD and no DAP, or you can do something slightly more complicated called RAD to DAP, where you pay some RAD and then the DAP and sometimes the other costs can come out of the RAD, and so the RAD you've got in the bank, sort of you chip away at it over time. The basic daily fee pays for the living expenses in the home. It's again set by the government and reviewed annually. It's currently $50.66 a day. Everyone pays it. It's set at 85% of the age pension. Then the means tested fee is quite a little bit more complicated. Its level depends on your income and asset levels, and it depends on your level of care needed. It can be up to $240 a day if you're a high means and high care person. But it is capped at $27,232 a year, that's reviewed annually. And there's also a lifetime cap, $65,000, $65,367 at the moment. Say that again. $65,367 per annum. Sorry, lifetime, that's the lifetime cap. Now, if you've had a home care package, some of the costs you pay towards the home care package count towards these caps. So remember that when you're entering residential care, that there may be some credits that you've got to tell them about so that they can calculate this means tested fee correctly. And then finally, the additional services fee. Cameron mentioned that it can either be zero or anywhere between $10 and $150 a day, depending on the home. But it's normally between about $40 and $70. That's the most common level. And that pays for the extra things. So the glass of wine, the fabric tablecloth, and all the amazing facilities that Cameron was talking about with the Mark Moran lifestyle facilities. So if I can just go through what all that looks like in numbers, because I'm the numbers lady tonight. I've got 4 examples of different people with different means. But you all want to know what it costs. So firstly, I have Janet, who's been busy as a missionary most of her life and doesn't have any savings and is renting at the moment. She'll have to choose, probably have to choose a residential facility that doesn't have the extra services fee. She's a full age pensioner with very few assets, so she does not have to pay the RAD. She pays the basic fee. Everyone pays the basic fee. She pays no means tested fee. There's no, my example has no extra services fee. So she will be paying $18,491,000 to live at her nursing home, and that's roughly 85% of her age pension. So everyone in Australia will be able to, if they need to go to a nursing home, they will be able to go no matter their means. But if you have more money, then the government expects you to contribute to your living expenses and to the home. So I've taken Bob as another example. The RAD at his nursing home is $550,000. That's quite a common RAD, because it's the level above which the nursing home has to get special approval for. That equates to an $89.90 daily accommodation payment. He still pays the basic fee. His means tested fee is calculated at quite low, $1.37 a day, because he doesn't have a lot of savings and he's on a full age pension, but he does own his own home. The aged care facility he's chosen has an extra services fee of $45 a day. I've got these from live examples, but I honestly can't remember which one I got that one from. So total daily care, total daily fee, $186. That equates to $68,000 a year. So he's going to have to make some decisions at some stage, and probably live there for a year on his savings and his pension, but that's about all. So that'll be a conversation to have. Terry is a self-funded retiree, so he's got more money. He owns his home, he has no age pension, and he has chosen a nursing home that has quite a large RAD, $1.5 million. So you can see the daily payment for that, $250. Again, he pays the daily fee, everyone pays that. His means tested fee is a lot higher because his savings are higher, his deemed income is higher. But notice it's capped at $27,000 a year. So I think $84.87 a day works out to be like 11 months or 11 and a half months. And then it'll be capped. The extra services fee in this one, I think it's Montefiore at Randwick, I dropped it down from, is $67 a day. So he's up to paying, the first year he's there, he'll be paying $155,000 to be there. And then if he stays there for 3 years, and he hasn't got any credits from his home care previously, that'll drop. I think I've got $128,000 a year once he doesn't have to pay the means tested fee anymore. And then finally, if Terry decides to sell his home to move into care, and then pays the full accommodation payment as a RAD, then he won't have to pay that daily fee. daily accommodation payment, and the annual fees dropped to $70,000 a year. So yeah, they're the numbers for you. Go home and perhaps with a little more idea, and it's fascinating to see how big the spread is. And it would be even more, like sometimes the RAD is even higher, not often, but there's a couple of places in Sydney that has a higher RAD. Won't name any names.
Also have lower ones.
Yes, that's right. Exactly right. There's something for everyone. So just a few residential care tips and traps that I came up with tonight that I wanted to share with you. That if you can't afford the full RAD, like don't be put off. So in my mum's case, like she didn't want to go to a residential care facility, but you know they talk about it at church and everything, and she thought you had to have $1 million sitting in the bank for that RAD, and that you couldn't enter residential care without paying the full 100% amount. You know, there it is, Melinda, just in case. But it's not the case. You can pay it as a combination, and then I would also say see if you can look into respite, as the others have said, that it's less expensive to start with. You only pay the basic fee when you're in respite care. It's a lot less expensive, and it buys you time, and you can try before you buy. The contracts that you sign to go into the facilities are lengthy, and just be wary. Don't tick the full RAD box unless you know you're definitely paying the full RAD. By ticking the full RAD box, legally you're saying you're going to pay it, and if you're the power of attorney that's ticked that and then the money doesn't come through, the nursing home can demand it from you. So if you're not sure, don't tick it. That's okay. You can tick it. You can pay it all later. You can pay part later, and you can just leave that box blank for now. And also seek legal or financial advice before you pay the RAD on behalf of a loved one. So often is the case, mum and dad don't have a lot of money, but son or daughter have made good in life, and they're happy to pay, $1 million for dad to go into the right care. And just be really careful if you're going to pay something like that on your parents' behalf, because if the parent passes away, that RAD is paid to the estate, and then you might be a bit cross with your siblings for getting equal share, basically equal share in that RAD. So there are other ways around it. There are other ways to fund your parents' retirement living, but don't just step in and pay it all at once, because there may be a family argument afterwards. And finally, just take a full circle, make sure the estate planning is up to date. Make sure you've got the enduring power of attorney and the enduring guardianship.